Uh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's up? Welcome in GC Live Wednesday episode of the show. Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark here. As always, brought to you by our buddy Clint Hammond of Movement Mortgage, ClintHammond.com, 803-771-6933. That's the phone number as always. If you want more information, go to ClintHammond.com. Clint's a mortgage broker here in Columbia, but serving the state of South Carolina, and I believe actually several other states as well. So, again, if you're in the market for a new home or just are thinking about making that jump from renting to home ownership and are sort of curious, how does this work? What can I afford? How much down payment do I need? What options do I have? Are there programs out there that can help me as a first-time home buyer? A lot of times that answer is yes, and Clint can get very, very creative in helping you sort through that. So, again, hit Clint up, 803-771-6933. Great dude, great Gamecock, and supporter here on the show. Never a dull moment in Gamecock Nation. I think Tyler Head, our 1075 host and producer, is starting to learn that, Chris, that even as we're rolling into New Year, we're on January 10 at this point. College football season itself is over, but there has really not been a day other than maybe a little break for Christmas that there hasn't been something to talk about. And for South Carolina today, that something is continued shuffling, I guess you would say, with the coaching staff.
Good term, shuffling. And, of course, the two moves, Wes, that we're going to probably spend the bulk of this show talking about. Shane Beamer tabbing a new assistant coach. Of course, has not been officially announced yet. There has not been a contract approved, but James Coley, veteran coach of several programs, including most recently Texas A&M. He's been at Georgia, Miami, Florida State, started his career with Nick Saban at LSU. He will be a new member of the coaching staff. And then, of course, Jody Wright, South Carolina's tight ends coach, will be heading to take the head coaching job at Murray State. Gamecocks still looking for a running backs coach, and there could be expected to be some additional shuffling on the staff, even beyond that. So you're right. Wes, I think you and I probably had an idea when we went to bed on Tuesday night, me earlier than you, as usual, that we would be covering some coaching moves today. And I think we ended up getting even more than we bargained for because of the Jody Wright situation as well.
Yeah, and all credit where it's due. I mean, a guy I got a lot of respect to. Actually, both guys I got a lot of respect for. Jody Wright as a coach, and then Matt Zenitz, 24/7 Sports, used to work with us over there at On 3, broke the news last night that Coley is expected to be hired at South Carolina. And then here we are today. We got confirmation on that, and Zenitz all over it, as he normally is, one of the best guys, I feel like, for national breaking coaching news. And so, I think, first of all, kind of you're like, all right, what's the corresponding move here, almost, so to speak? And all this was kind of playing out in conjunction with each other with the the Murray State hire of Jody Wright, which I guess probably has not been officially announced on their end quite yet, but is going to happen. And so it all started to kind of make sense, how this has played out. And I'll say, hey, let's throw our boy Clowney a little bit of credit as well. David Cloninger, Chris, he was on the
A&M scent, wasn't he?
He was on the A&M scent. So,
yeah.
I got no problem giving people credit on stuff like that. And so that happens. And then we got news confirmed this morning. We're able to put it out there. I think first you were, Chris, on Jody Wright to Murray State. And so let's start with Jody. And by the way, y'all, be careful about fake Twitter accounts as well. T, I see your message there. That's not a James Coley account. The post from outside Williams-Brice. So I didn't retweet it, but I saw it. We already had it buttoned up enough, confirmed that it didn't need, like, I wasn't like, oh, that's new. But I saw the Coley tweet and I was like, oh, he's already in town. And then I got to look and I was like, wait a second. This is not him at all. So you got to be more and more like vigilant, I feel like, in making sure what you're reading is real. In this case, didn't really matter because he's coming on board regardless. But that stuff will get you, man, even when you just live on this stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, I want to go into Jody. I thought, man, first of all, congrats to him. I know we both feel the same way there. Guy that's worked his way up the kind of coaching ladder, a football man. Like this dude, his brother's a high school coach, a football family, hilarious dude, great networker, very well liked. I think that's going to put him in a spot to hire a good staff for that level because he knows everybody. But for South Carolina, this is a guy who came in and brought, I thought, a little bit of that Saban recruiting juice to the staff. Kind of was never seemed scared about butting heads with big time programs if you're Jody Wright. So kudos, congrats to him, man. I feel like it's a pretty good outside the box hire for Murray State.
Yeah, it was interesting. Murray State, for context, Wes, they had a rough year. They were 2-9. So their head coach, Dean Hood, retired and then took a job at Kentucky as an off-the-field guy. And they play in an extremely competitive, section of FCS. And they actually were looking at it earlier today. Their 2024 schedule, welcome, Jody Wright. You get to play Missouri on the road, top 10 team to open the season. They'll also go to Kroger Field and play Kentucky. And then they've got some really good teams that they match up with on an annual basis. So, if you're taking over a 2-9 team, there's problems there. Obviously, there's problems probably with, your roster not being that great, maybe culture, maybe both of those things. And so Jody Wright will get started on those things quickly. And I think you're right, Wes, an outside the box type hire. You're not pulling, a coordinator maybe who's been a hot name lately. Obviously, an FCS head coaching job like this, it attracted, my understanding, some interesting candidates. It's not the same as, a Power 5 head coaching job, right? But still one that I think they talked to some interesting people. They talked to some offensive coordinators, some defensive coordinators. But Jody Wright fits the guy of a bill who's been around the block. He's worked for some big head coaches. He's worked in the SEC. He's worked at FCS. He's a Jacksonville State grad and has also worked at Jacksonville State as a coach. And so he knows, like you said, Wes, that landscape. He's also been a personnel guy for Nick Saban off the field and was actually a part of a couple national title teams there in that capacity. So when you look at a program like Murray State, who obviously needs to improve their roster, that's an area where I think somebody like Jody Wright can go and really step in and improve that with recruiting. And I think Wes did a good job at South Carolina as a recruiter as well. You look at some of the guys that he got them in on. Signing Michael Smith was, I think, behind the scenes, the more and more I've learned about that one since signing day, holding off Auburn, holding off Tennessee, Ohio State had made a run at Michael Smith. This is a big-time prospect out of Savannah, and Jody Wright was able to navigate that one very, very well. So definitely brought some recruiting juice and connections to South Carolina that he'll now be taken to a different level.
Yeah, man, and I think, Michael Smith, that one, we were hearing some stuff behind the scenes during it, like trying to make sense of all this, and Auburn, Tennessee, certainly, you picked up the Ohio State stuff. Like, those are obviously some sort of blue blood type programs, and they were pushing. And, this kid's an Under Armour All-American for a reason. And, I will say this, y'all, something we've, Chris, I actually haven't even looked. Have you made your post yet on Gamecock Central? I guess important. Let's note that like we're kind of using the word shuffle for a reason. So don't
Yes.
like I think South Carolina's still in the process of solidifying all the moving pieces. Now the big moving piece was obviously Jody getting this job. That allows you the room to go get Coley, and then you add another coach as well because of Hardesty being gone. Well, don't there's been assumptions, and I get it because Coley has been a tight ends coach before, but he's coached multiple other spots as well on offense. So again, credit where it's due. I think when Zenit said an offensive assistant, he was very much on it. Like that was very deliberate.
Yes.
That speaks to what we have been told as well. Let's wait and see as these sort of chess pieces get moved into place what this staff is actually going to look like. Let's not just assume that it's going to be Coley slides right into tight ends. Do you think that's a fair way to say it?
That is. And I did make that post, and not only shout out to Clint Hammond, but shout out to Clint Morrison. I can tell that he was from one of his early comments, he's been checking out GamecockCentral.com. This happened in terms of how it ended up coming out, Wes. It happened backwards, right? Where you hearing about, because when some people saw, oh, James Coley, well, is he going to be the running backs coach, right? Because that's the only spot. The answer was no. But it's also hey, not necessarily when there's another coach opening now with Jody Wright leaving. So again, some additional shuffling. And all this, Wes, is one reason why we tried to consistently say, hey, look, it's the Tuesday after the Clemson game, for instance, just to use a random date. I know there's been no coaching moves, but that doesn't mean there will not be any coaching moves, right? When Montario Hardesty was dismissed, we said, hey, this doesn't mean this is the end. You know, there's opportunity. We knew other coaches were engaged with other jobs. We knew that there's a possibility of bringing in somebody, et cetera, some additional shuffling on the staff. And so that's what we're still monitoring right now. So just to recap, we anticipate an outside hire, not James Coley, being the running backs coach. And if you're thinking that Jody Wright is just being traded out for James Coley, not so fast on that one either. Let's just hold. Let's see where it shakes out. We're following it. We're going to continue to follow it, and we'll let everybody know where it stands.
Yeah, for sure. And so come on over to Gamecock Central, hang out with us on there. And I do think, hey, for just a random thought here, maybe kind of inside the business, we're always cognizant of, yes, you can get news on social media. Like, we understand that. We post on social media as well. But hopefully, with all the stuff that's just thrown out there on social media, Gamecock Central can be a place where you can come there and know, all right, this is sourced information that we're gathering. If it's a report where we're leaning on someone else, we're going to tell you, hey, Matt Zenit says this, we're confirming. If it's a report where it's firsthand, like Jody Wright, we're going to tell you, hey, we feel very strongly based on what we're being told that this is the truth, and you won't have to worry about, is this the right account or not? Is this a real person? There's a fake tweet that just went up before we went on about a certain Clemson wide receiver who Gamecock fans are very familiar with, completely fake tweet that he was going to enter the portal. So there's all types of stuff like that. So we'd love to have you come on over to Gamecock Central and hang out with us on the Insiders Forum. Right now, if you use SCAR1 as your code, $1 for 2 months at GamecockCentral.com. Again, $1 for 2 months, code SCAR1 on Gamecock Central. And I do want to get a little bit into what we've heard on the running back coaching search, Chris. I think safe to say there's been behind the scenes movement there, I would say, in the last, 24 hours or so, it seems like. But I think we're still kind of waiting for that one to get to the finish line, so to speak. And, maybe some final decisions there potentially soon. But let's go into Coley first and what he could mean for South Carolina. And then we'll get into what we've heard on the running backs coach sort of search as well. And so with Coley, I like the balance here, Chris, of, you potentially, like, you bring in, let's just give an example, a Sterling Lucas and, or even Jody Wright for that matter. Sterling comes in from the NFL, young guy, did not really have that experience recruiting at this level, but you said, look, likable, great personality, connects with people well. But Shane Beamer even talked about, or Sterling talked about it, or Beamer talked about it, maybe both of them did, about Sterling sort of going on the road with Beamer for the first time and Beamer like giving him the lay of the land. And so I think you always kind of need balance in your staff. So young guys bring certain things, fire, energy, kind of that youthfulness that everybody needs. They connect with players. Then if you go with a veteran, which is what Coley is, then, I think whenever you do that, you're talking about a guy who has seen it all, has seen what can happen in big boy recruiting battles. He's won big boy recruiting battles. He's lost big boy, he's seen everything that can happen. And so I really like having balance on your staff. And I think Coley is an example of Beamer going out and kind of getting one of those names that Gamecock fans kind of pine for on message boards, like a proven big name assistant coach.
Yeah, he's got that. I mean, he's a guy that's 50 years old, so he's still young, Wes, in my opinion, but also has plenty of experience, and I think his first job was at LSU in 2003, working as a grad assistant for Jimbo Fisher, who was the OC for Nick Saban at LSU. And since then, he's been he's been an OC or a co-OC at FIU, at Georgia. He's been a position coach at Georgia, position coach at A&M. He's been at FSU, a Miami native. And so he brings several things, obviously a lot of experience, but he's a guy that's got positional versatility and has been, quite frankly, Wes, during his career, he's shown to be an elite recruiter. And, we've seen this movie in the past, and I'm not saying Coley's going to play out this way by any means, but we've seen in the past where you get some guys that have done it at big name schools, they still have to go prove it at South Carolina or at any other new school. We've seen, you brought up Sterling Lucas earlier. Sterling Lucas, a guy who had never recruited at this level, but has shown the capacity to do it, right? When you look at Coley, I think recruiting has been a huge part of the conversation here in Columbia, right? Some of the misses, the desire to go get in on some bigger recruits. Now, they've done that under Shane Beamer, but you always need more, right? As you try to build your program. Talent acquisition, especially in this era, is the name of the game. And so you look at Coley, his track record, no matter what program he's been at, FSU, Miami, Georgia, A&M, he has a track record of going out and getting talent. And a lot of guys from South Florida, an area that South Carolina's not traditionally had a lot of success in, can he help them there? He signed guys at all those other places from that region. And I know you pointed this out yesterday, today, Wes. You go up and down his list of guys he's recruited. He's got some 5 stars on there for sure from back in the day and recently.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, Chris, when you kind of just you even saying the names of the schools he's been at, this guy has had no problem whatsoever getting job offers. I mean, when he's bounced around, it's been for excellent opportunities. And, I think it's just a guy that, again, to tie all this in, also does have some position versatility in terms of what he can do on your staff. He's been a coordinator before. And I'm not saying that in any way to mean that's what his role will be at South Carolina, because it's not. Let's just put that out there. But I think it's always good to have that additional experience, additional just sort of ability to sort of know the big picture, I think is what I'm trying to say. And so Coley brings that. He's old enough at 50 to have the experience, but still young enough to connect. And I think all those things are really important, man. So going to be a good hire as of 225. What is this, Wednesday? Not officially official as far as being buttoned up by the BOT and all that stuff, but firmly, truly expected to happen, I think, in terms of sounds like verbal agreements and all that stuff. It appears to completely be happening and will be a good hire for South Carolina. And we had a mention, yes, Travis. We talked about this on the radio today, man, but Coley and the South Florida connection. That's an area that has not been open to South Carolina in quite some time, Chris.
No, it hasn't. And we were trying to go over. I mean, South Carolina's signed a guy or two here and there, Wes, but as far as having a bunch of impact guys from that area, there aren't many of them, right? I mean, Gamecocks have had a guy here and there from Miami, from Fort Myers in Southwest Florida, et cetera, et cetera. But you go back, I mean, hopefully maybe somebody in the chat can help us out here on the show. But Rashad Fenton, who was in the 2015 class for South Carolina, was a South Florida guy. I remember Grady Brown, West, was able to get South Carolina in on some guys down there, but not a ton of them, right? And to recruit in that region, if you talk to high school coaches, college coaches about there, you have to know, you use the terminology lay of the land. You got to know the lay of the land in South Florida to go have some success. Coley's a guy that has a lot of connections down there. And again, go back to Georgia, A&M, FSU, of course, at Miami. He was able to get kids from Florida, from South Florida, to all of those programs. And you would have to expect, my expectation, Wes, is once he's officially at South Carolina, once he's officially in the saddle, so to speak, I think you're going to see some names come out from South Florida of, hey, this is a guy that James Coley has gotten South Carolina in the mix with. This guy's going to visit. And we might start seeing them be a little bit more active down there and landing more players from that region. But definitely a guy who comes to South Carolina with a really good recruiting rep.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So that'll be exciting. We'll see if some names pop up. You got to imagine in this sort of, it's crazy how quickly you kind of turn the page. You're starting to see these 2015 or 2025s start to, hey, I'm going here, here, and here during the spring. I've got these dates, and you got junior days going on pretty soon. Believe it or not, we'll be talking about spring practice, and guys will be visiting for that. And so I think what this does, when you kind of talk about getting you in the door, like getting you kind of opening that window, I think it's about getting them on campus. Once you get them to South Carolina, like it's up to all the other aspects of the program to land them. But I think it's pretty easy when these schools, especially it seems like the Florida schools, take those big bus trips from down there. I think if you're Coley, you got those connections where you're going to say, hey, man, bring your guys by. Like, come see what we got. Hey, our facilities are way better than anybody down there even realizes. So I think one thing we've seen with South Carolina, man, when they get kids on campus, they do have success. And a lot of times, the further you get away from Columbia, when you do get those guys on campus, a lot of times we get that feedback of, hey, I didn't realize that South Carolina had the resources that they do on campus. So I think that's something, it's not an instant, it's not an immediate, but over time, we're going to kind of see that start to pay off, I think. And somebody mentioned, I guess Travis again, the portal. When you bring in a new coach, you never know what portal guy may pop up as, oh, he knows that guy. He's got a relationship with this guy. And does it get you somebody on campus, from the portal as well?
Yep. I just went completely haywire there, Wes, for a second. Sorry. Yeah. Portal connections, big, relationship building. I mean, it's so important. And I think, Wes, too, you and I were kind of talking philosophically about recruiting, and I think some people have posited that in this new era, it's just about money in the NIL and transfer portal era. And look, is it more important nowadays to have it's critical, right, to have a sound, NIL set up at your school through your collective and through deals, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, absolutely critical. If you don't have that, you're not going to recruit very well nowadays in the portal or in high school / junior college. But recruiting is still a lot about relationships and trust, and being able to know how to recruit certain types of guys, and who are the important people around prospects, because oftentimes prospects, I mean, they've got family members, they've got coaches, they've got trainers, they've got handlers. You need somebody that knows that landscape, but you need somebody who has done it, who has proven they can do it, and also, has the ability to step into this new era and be able to adapt to those changes. And I think from everything I've heard on James Coley, you think he's going to be pretty well equipped, to be able to do that.
No doubt, man, for sure. All right, before we go any further, got to tell you about our friend Andy Luedecke from My Perfect Franchise. Go check out myperfectfranchise.net. 404-973-9901. Email is andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And you may be asking yourself, what is My Perfect Franchise? What is the purpose of it? And so Andy, who founded and started and runs My Perfect Franchise, he is a franchise consultant as well as himself a franchise owner. And what he's going to do is he's going to help people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while you keep your current job, want to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy wants to help you with all those things. So essentially, maybe you're sitting at home, you want to be a franchise owner, you want to be a business owner, but you just aren't quite sure how to get started. Andy will chat with you for free, no cost whatsoever on your end. He'll chat with you. You'll answer some questions, and then he's going to match you with a franchise that is looking for someone just like you. So, again, call him, text him, 404-973-9901. Go to myperfectfranchise.net for more information, or email him, Andy, ANDY, at myperfectfranchise.net. Appreciate Andy for being a sponsor on our podcast and several other shows throughout the On3 network. Chris, let's talk running backs, man. Do you think we have this thing figured out by the end of the week? I know that's hard because you're always reliant on like other people for that. Like maybe Beamer wants it to be done by the end of the week, but everybody he's talking to, they're on their timeline as well. And he and Loggins have got to make a decision. Then whoever they offer or, almost offer has to make a decision. You can't say for sure, but it kind of feels like we could be getting closer to the finish line just based on what we've been hearing.
I do think we are closer to the end than the beginning, if that makes sense. This is not one that I think we're going to be sitting here January 30th going, who's the running backs coach? I really don't anticipate that. Hopefully that will not be saved and put on that freezing cold takes thing. But, I do think with what we have, Wes, I feel pretty strongly about that. Something would really have to change for this thing to slow down. Now, to be clear, we don't know who the guy is yet. We know that Shane Beamer has had conversations. We know a few of the names that have been in the mix, that are in the mix. We just don't quite know yet, don't have it pinned down. And I do think that's because it's not totally firmed up who is the next running backs coach going to be. But I definitely agree. It seems to be getting closer and closer to wrapping it up. I wouldn't be shocked sitting here again. Let me set the time. Wednesday, January 10th, 2:34 p.m. Would not be shocked even if it's in the next 24, 36, 48 hours, something like that. We will see, because these things can ebb and flow. They can change, but it seems to be going more that direction.
Yeah, for sure. Some name. Let's get into a couple names, man. We've mentioned them on Gamecock Central. If you're on there, you already know these names, and you have known them for a while. Um, but let's reward the people. We're at the 30-minute mark. If you've stuck in there and listened to us for 30 minutes now, um, let's reward them. Some of the names we've heard, obviously, the initial name that sort of everybody was speculating on, Jimmy Smith in Arkansas. But then some other names have popped up. We've heard sort of float around. Newland Isaac at Liberty, Matt Merritt at USF, and then Thomas Brown, former Gamecock running backs coach, who was on that Panther staff that just has had to experience a coaching change. And I got to think Thomas Brown would have many, many, many options, but that's speculation on my part. I mean, the guy has been a rising star, though, not just at the college level, and moving up in the NFL as well. Called plays for the Panthers this year. Initially was kind of OC by name, then became the actual OC, and so rising star there, man. I will say this: it seems like we've heard, at least today. Now these things can be fluid. We've heard a lot of Newland Isaac smoke, you would say, during the last 24 hours. And so I will add this, man, that I want to get your thoughts. I feel like y'all know, sometimes I just lump us all together. The media, fans, Gamecock Nation, everybody in this bubble. I feel like we assume things quite a bit when it comes to this stuff. And so Rocket and Jimmy Smith, if for whatever reason the hire was Jimmy Smith, would that be a reunion for those two guys? Of course, obviously it would. Is that some type of package deal? By all indications, no. I think there was an assumption when the move was made that it was going to be Jimmy Smith, and he is interested in the job. But this is not, from everything we've gathered at this point, this is not a just go hire Travian Robertson, for example, move. This is not where there's one guy, one interview, one conversation, and then he's the guy. They have gone through the process. And Chris, I also think the more I hear, the more it sounds like Dow Loggins has been pretty involved in this hire. And maybe in the Coley hire too. I don't know. I can't speak to that. Maybe so. But what we've heard about this one in particular, it feels like Dow Loggins has been very involved. And it also, if you look at a guy who came in as a new OC without his own staffers, it makes sense for him to have a lot of say in this one.
It does. And yeah, that Jimmy Smith connection was, I mean, Wes, how long did that float around as a dream scenario for Gamecock Nation? Either Rocket or Jimmy Smith or both, ideally, right? In people's minds. Doesn't mean it was necessarily ever that package deal, right? Now, Jimmy Smith, aside from being Rocket Sanders' running backs coach at Arkansas, did make sense for this job. And the indications that we've gotten is certainly, as you said, Jimmy Smith interested in the job. And I think at least some level of interest from South Carolina and him, and made a lot of sense because he's from the state of South Carolina, has roots here, coached with Dow Loggins, right? There's a good recruiter, a good coach by all indications. So he kind of fit that profile and fit the bill. But I think we found out pretty quickly that, like you said earlier, it was not going to be a Travian Robertson situation where it was a very quick, snappy process. We wondered if it would be, but then as the days tick by, you started hearing, okay, this name's in the mix. Okay, here's a name to watch. Here's a name to watch. You hear more and more about Newland Isaac. You hear a new name here or there, and that kind of gives you the sense of, okay, this thing is more of an actual process with some actual people involved. And to that end, Wes, Newland Isaac, another guy with South Carolina roots, right? From Hopkins. He's a guy that's been with Jamie Chadwell for basically his whole career, right? And is, from what I've picked up, pretty highly regarded. As a coach, he's young. He was the 2021 AFCA Assistant Coach of the Year, which is pretty good, and has also been a Broyles Award nominee. Not sure if he was a semifinalist or just a nominee, but so pretty highly regarded guy. And the more people we've talked to about him, a lot of people seem to be, pretty impressed with him as well.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And the hometown connection there, I think, obviously plays in with both him and Jimmy Smith. Both those guys, Palmetto State guys, who I think probably love this state, and I think not that that's a requirement, but it does help when you're from an area, have some ties, and have an appreciation for living in that state, and being at the main school in that state as well. Transfer portal question here by Billy, and he talk about a quarterback coming in. Chris, I continue to think that quarterback and wide receiver are your two remaining sort of areas of focus from the portal. At one point, it did seem like another defensive back might be likely or possible. That talk seems to have kind of simmered at this point. It seems like quarterback and wide receiver, if they could add the right guy at those two spots, is sort of your two positions to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Gamecocks would love to add, another receiver and add somebody with, a little bit more size. When you look at the profiles of who they've brought in, good players, but adding somebody, 6 foot, 6'1", somebody with some length, maybe more of an outside type of receiver, or a guy who could play inside or outside with more size, would seem to be a priority. The portal is closed, Wes, but still guys in the portal, right, that are yet to decide. Visits actually for guys who are still looking for transfer destinations that will reopen this weekend. And so always an opportunity to, maybe a guy pops up. You also keep in mind, of course, as we always say, the spring transfer window, post-spring, there's possibility that you could see somebody pop up then if South Carolina has not gone ahead and filled that receiver need. And then, of course, quarterback. Right now you go into spring, projected to have either 2 or 3 scholarship quarterbacks, one of which is a true freshman with Dante Reno. We'll see what South Carolina decides to do with Luedecke, and that may depend on what happens in the portal. And the guy to watch there is exactly who Lauren just brought up here in the chat. Robbie Ashford is slated to be in town this weekend. Alabama native, former Oregon, former Auburn quarterback, was at Auburn this past year, now in the portal. And I think, Wes, after what seems like a pretty long process of trying to figure out, all right, who is the portal quarterback? Who's it going to be? If all goes well and if all lines up this weekend, I think there's a decent chance that Robbie Ashford ends up, being that guy, but we'll see how it goes.
There you hear it, Chris Clark guaranteeing that South Carolina will have a transfer portal quarterback this weekend. Tweet it, Facebook it, Instagram it, TikTok it, and also follow us on all those platforms at Gamecock Central. You know why that would make a lot of sense, though, man? There wouldn't be a ton of change in your scheme. Let's say, you're always going to have open competition, right? Every coach is going to say that. You compete for every spot. Let's project this out, though. Lenoris Sellers will probably be your starting quarterback in 2024. Well, let's say Robbie Ashford's your guy. They fight it out. Lenoris wins the job. Well, to me, it's not the same skill set, but in terms of the running ability, the athleticism, in terms of what your overall scheme would be, he is, I think, a pretty good fit for what I imagine this offense is going to be this coming season.
Yes, he is a dual threat guy. He's been a starter. He's been a backup. He knows the deal as far as competing, Wes. He's been there. He's done that. And so he fits that profile. I think it's hard. This is a weird situation for South Carolina because you have a guy in Lenoris Sellers who's taken, I don't know, Wes, 30, 40 snaps in his career. He hasn't taken many meaningful snaps in terms of being the guy. He's made some really cool plays, but not exactly in those big moments where he's been the guy, the starter. And around South Carolina, people know that this guy has a chance to be really, really good. Outside of South Carolina, maybe not a ton of people, right? Maybe they've heard of him. Say, oh, okay, I've seen his YouTube clips. Probably pretty good. And so he'll probably be the guy, but you still need competition, right? And you're trying to recruit to that situation as well. And so it's really cool to think about just on paper, well, let's just go get, some 5-star quarterback, or whatever, who's in the portal. When it comes down to it, not so easy, right? And in this new era, that's why you're seeing a Malik Murphy transfer from Texas and end up going to Duke, right? Shane Beamer said, hey, we've had some transfer quarterbacks call and they want to be assured of the job. They're not going to do that at South Carolina because you've got Lenora Sellers, and that's not how Shane Beamer wants to operate anyway. So, interesting situation, unique situation. I think when you look at somebody like Ashford, or just to be fair, to throw in another one that's been there in the past, at least, like a Chandler Morris, guys who have been backups and have started, have dealt with some adversity. They understand the deal. They're good with competing, and maybe ultimately might be good with being backup quarterbacks at an SEC school. That's kind of what you're looking for at this point.
Yeah, and I tend to think, man, you're trying to think of the best way to say this. You're not going to get the complete package. Like a guy that's just can run it, can throw it. There's no dings, there's no questions, there's no worries whatsoever. That guy's not coming here. So to me, I would take the guy like Ashford, who, let's see, I'm pulling it up right now. Played 131 snaps at Auburn this past season. 70.8 PFF grade overall on offense. 52.0, which 60 is the baseline in a passing game. 74.7 in the running game. So if I know that I can't just have like a guy who checks every single box, to me, give me the athlete. Give me the guy that if he has to play a game or two, at least, like, does that give you a complete offense that's going to go win you a title? No. But in my opinion, if I don't have the thrower / runner that can do it all, give me the guy, especially with what I think is going to be a much better offensive line, what's going to be a much better overall rushing attack. I'll take the air out of the ball and just have that quarterback running threat. We've seen teams be able to at least make it work offensively with that. Whereas if you have a guy who's sort of up and down in the passing game, but then doesn't have the rushing ability as well, that's when you see offenses that just can't move the ball at all.
Yeah, and it's so important to be dual threat nowadays anyway, Wes. And I think, you look at the teams that have been very successful, typically their quarterback has a level of mobility. And I think even though we saw it firsthand last year, how mobile Spencer Rattler was able to be in the pocket and escaping and getting some key yardage, and buying himself time. I think he'll stay in the underrated runner category, right? Even though we know, like, we can properly rate him. He was mobile, but he'll just kind of stay in that category, underrated. I think you need it. And you're right. When you have to go to a backup quarterback, there's a reason they're a backup, right? Usually, at least for starters. And if the limitation there is, maybe throwing the football or command of the offense, being able to lean on the run element is certainly something you would love to have. So it makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, and you won't completely change your offense either, which I think is a factor. Yeah, you know what? The only way, in my opinion, these days is to have that guy that maybe, quote, has it all. Would be the reverse situation of what South Carolina has. really kind of what South Carolina had this past season, where let's say, and obviously we're not speaking it into existence because the season is over, but luckily Spencer never had to deal with any injuries that kept him out. But you had a guy like Lenore Sellers, who we think has a great upside, but was a true freshman this past season. So I think the only way you kind of get that these days is if there's a guy who's younger than your starter and is sort of waiting in the wings, but if they had to go in, has that upside and potential. Whereas right now, you have this redshirt freshman, like you said earlier, man, it's just hard to go out and find somebody unless they're like Dante Reno, who is a true freshman coming in, that is younger than Sellers, obviously. So I think for South Carolina, if they can get Ashford, we'll see how it goes this weekend. All things considered, I actually think it's a pretty good get and makes a lot of sense. And all right, before we close this thing out, Christopher Clark, why don't you tell everybody about our friends at Liberty Tax and how you have already taken some steps to overcome your taxiety?
Yeah, I haven't even gotten to the taxiety stage, Wes, and it's a good thing because my friend Larry Slaughter at Liberty Tax has helped me out. My wife and I have met with him in person, via phone, via email. Larry, super accommodating, super helpful. He's been around for a while, knows a lot about taxes, in short, Wes, and wealth of industry knowledge. He's answered so many of our questions. And whether you're an individual, single, whether you're married, have children, business owner, just a W-2 employee, 1099, whatever your tax status is, he's seen it, and he can help you get a great tax plan together so that you can avoid your taxiety. And if you've already gotten into the taxiety stage, been chewing on that pencil like you see on the stream there, he can help you overcome it and get rid of it. 803-462-5576. It's our friend Larry, Liberty Tax.
Yeah, shout out Larry. Appreciate his support of the show, as always. What do you think, man? Did we hit everything we need to hit today, or you got any closing thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think we hit most everything. We'll keep tracking all the coaching stuff, Wes. There's going to be some recruiting to talk about. A couple junior days coming up. Those are later this month. Still working on building out those lists of visitors and everything. So let's try to save a little bit for the next show.
Yeah, for sure, man. And by the way, a little shout out to Tanner Bailey, officially announcing his retirement from football. Looks like he's going to be an Auburn student moving forward. So Tanner, always a good dude, man. Always enjoyed talking to him. And kind of sad, Tanner and Stone, who were like they were like this, like they were buddies. Both of them have moved on from South Carolina. So I want to throw a shout out to Tanner, and hopefully, I think that's going to be it's a tough transition for a lot of guys when they play football their whole lives. So hopefully he is able to get comfortable and find what he's looking for in the non-football life. All right, y'all, that's going to do it. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Appreciate you for hanging in there. Appreciate all of our supporters and sponsors here as well. Whatever platform you listen or watch the show on, please leave a review. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, all those things. That will help get us in front of more eyeballs. And as always, if you're not a subscriber to GamecockCentral.com, come check us out. Use code SCAR1 to get 2 months for $1. All right, y'all. For Chris, I'm Wes. Probably be back hopefully on Friday, and maybe we'll have a lot more to talk about then. So y'all have a good one, and we'll see you then.